Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good evening. How are you?
Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. A few questions to the proponent of the bill, if I may.
I assume that's Representative Blumenthal in this case, sir?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
We'll proceed that way. Representative Blumenthal, please ready yourself.
Mr. Speaker, through you, could the lines 10 through 24, just so I'm clear, could the good representative just summarize those lines, please? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Blumenthal.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, to the good proponent the good questioner, the good representative. Lines 10 through 14 of the bill essentially provide a private cause of action where if someone here in the state of Connecticut is sued by someone in another state under one of these SB 8 style bounty laws for doing something in terms of reproductive health care that is legal here in the state of Connecticut, and there's a judgment entered against them for a certain amount in that other state, they could then sue the person who had originally sued them for reimbursement, attorney's fees, costs here in our state. Through you.
Representative Lanoue.
Thank you for that answer. Now, how would the abortion provider recover the damages in such a case? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Blumenthal.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, it would depend on the circumstances. Obviously, the person who provided the reproductive health care services in the first place would have to have personal jurisdiction over the individual that sued them in the first place. Usually how that would happen would be that whoever sued them in that other state would try to enforce the judgment here in the state of Connecticut. And then ultimately, if the person who brought that action here in Connecticut was successful and had established personal jurisdiction, they would be able to seek recompense and compensation the same way that everyone else who wins a lawsuit here in the state of Connecticut is through our courts. Through you.
Representative Lanoue.
Again, thank you for that answer. So if I'm understanding you correctly, the abortionist or abortion provider would file a lawsuit here in the state of Connecticut against somebody from out of state. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Blumenthal.
Yes, through you.
Representative Lanoue. Sorry, that was a quick answer, but succinct.
Okay, thank you. So the again, so if I'm understanding this correctly, the we mentioned the state of Texas, for example. If there was somebody in the state of Texas that filed a lawsuit against a abortion provider in Connecticut, they filed that in the state of Texas against the person that was the abortion provider from Connecticut. They got judgment in Texas, and it was the abortion provider was following the four corners of the law here in Connecticut. He or she could then countersue that person here in the state of Connecticut. Am I interpreting that correctly? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Blumenthal.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, that is essentially correct.
Representative Lanoue.
Okay, so how would we enforce a judgment, assuming the abortion provider receives a judgment against a person? I'm going to use the example of Texas or a party in Texas. How would we enforce that judgment here in Connecticut against assets and entities in another state, if by example Texas? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Blumenthal.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, states across the country have different statutes in their statute books that essentially delineate how they will enforce judgments that come from out of state. Many have passed a law called the Uniform Enforcement of Judgments Act. Some have passed different versions of enforcement of judgment statutes. And so what the person here in Connecticut would do would be utilize whatever Texas's version of that statute is to seek recompense from the person there in Texas. Through you.
Representative Lanoue.
Mr. Speaker, may stand at ease for one moment?
Sorry, say that again, sir?
May I stand at ease for one moment?
Of course you may.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I do have some additional questions for the proponent. However, I inadvertently went in front of our ranking member, Representative Pettit, from the Public Health Committee. So I'm going to yield back to floor and reserve the option to reclaim my time after the ranking member.
Representative, I know how that goes, so here's what we'll do. We'll let Representative Pettit go, and then when he's done, we'll go back to you if you still have questions. How's that sound?
Fair enough. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
No problem.